If you have been paying attention to the recent chatter around town, you already know that everyone is obsessing over the impending arrival of the mysterious businessman known only as Hudson. The prevailing theory floating around the fandom is that Hudson is somehow tied to Ethan, perhaps chasing him down over some past misdeeds, or maybe even arriving to claim paternity of little Phoebe. But if you ask me, I think the masses are looking at the completely wrong family tree. I have a wildly different theory about what is truly going to happen when Hudson officially sets foot in town, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the art gallery crowd or the corporate drama at Deception. I firmly believe that Hudson is not just arriving as a fresh face with deep pockets, but rather as a ticking time bomb, carrying secrets that possess the sheer explosive power to completely upend and devastate an entirely different family. To fully grasp the magnitude of what I believe is about to unfold, we have to look at the current landscape of the canvas. Right now, Curtis is standing on the precipice of losing his freedom, agonizing over a plea deal that could send him to Pentonville for a short stint, all because of his violent physical altercation with the brilliant surgeon, Isaiah. This legal nightmare is unfolding at the absolute worst possible time, right as Portia has just given birth to their newborn son, creating an atmosphere of intense pressure and suffocating anxiety. Meanwhile, Marshall and Stella have recently returned to the canvas with the express purpose of pressuring Curtis and Portia to do better and heal their fractured dynamic. But what if Marshall's return is not just about offering fatherly advice? What if Marshall is here because the writers are setting the stage for a family collision of epic proportions? This brings me to my central thesis regarding our mysterious new arrival. I strongly suspect that Hudson is actually Isaiah's brother. From the very first whispers of his character description, Hudson has been painted as an incredibly dangerous, formidable figure who operates with a certain ruthless efficiency. If this theory holds true, he is not coming to town to close a corporate merger or hunt down a rogue grifter like Ethan. He is coming to town for blood. He is arriving to stand firmly by Isaiah's side in this escalating war against Curtis. Family loyalty is a powerful motivator, and when you introduce a character with a dangerous edge who suddenly has a deeply personal stake in a local conflict, you have all the ingredients for a spectacular revenge narrative. Think about the specific details of the inciting incident for a moment. Curtis did not just punch a random guy in a bar. He assaulted a highly skilled medical professional and severely injured his hand. To a surgeon, their hands are their entire livelihood, their identity, and their purpose. By damaging Isaiah's hand, Curtis essentially threatened to destroy the man's entire career and life's work. If you ask me, Hudson is going to view this not just as a simple assault, but as a profound, unforgivable debt that must be collected. Hudson strikes me as the kind of man who believes in an eye for an eye, and he will undoubtedly be ready and willing to exact brutal vengeance on his brother's behalf, seeking to dismantle Curtis's life just as thoroughly as Curtis threatened to dismantle Isaiah's. We have all seen Curtis struggling to keep his head above water recently, desperately trying to balance his impending legal doom with the fragile joy of welcoming a new child with Portia. He is a man teetering on the absolute edge of a sheer cliff, and Hudson's arrival would be the violent shove that sends him plummeting into the abyss. I can easily envision a scenario where Hudson begins a systematic campaign of intimidation and retaliation against Curtis, utilizing his vast resources and dangerous connections to corner the new father. The tension would be palpable, a slow-boiling pot of animosity that threatens to spill over into outright violence at any given moment, leaving everyone caught in the crossfire, terrified of the inevitable explosion. However, despite Hudson's dangerous aura and his thirst for retribution, I do not actually believe this storyline will devolve into a prolonged, bloody mob war. This is where it gets incredibly interesting, guys. I think the writers are building up this intense threat of physical violence specifically to subvert our expectations with an emotional detonation instead. I predict that just as the conflict reaches its absolute boiling point, just as Hudson and Curtis are about to cross a line from which neither can ever return, Marshall will be the one to step directly into the line of fire. Marshall is going to appear at the exact right moment to physically and emotionally halt the violence before it spirals completely out of control, acting as the ultimate barrier between these two warring factions. But Marshall will not be able to stop this runaway train with mere words of wisdom or fatherly pleas for peace. Hudson is not the type of man to be swayed by a stranger's moral grandstanding. To stop the bloodshed, Marshall will be forced to reach deep into his own dark, hidden past and pull out a secret he has kept buried for decades. I believe Marshall will look Curtis and Isaiah dead in the eyes and confess a truth that will shatter their respective realities into a million jagged pieces. Marshall is going to confirm that Curtis and Isaiah are in fact half-brothers, sharing him as their biological father. Just pause and let the sheer gravity of that hypothetical revelation wash over you. The man Curtis brutally assaulted, the man who is currently trying to ensure Curtis spends the first 8 months of his newborn son's life locked inside a Pentonville cell, is his own flesh and blood. This secret would leave both Curtis and Isaiah completely paralyzed with shock, forcing an immediate, agonizing reevaluation of their deeply entrenched hatred for one another. It transforms a straightforward narrative of assault and legal retribution into a complex, tragic Shakespearean drama about a fractured family tearing itself apart in the dark, completely unaware of the blood that binds them together. Now, I always like to play devil's advocate with my own theories, so let us take a moment to critically examine this from a historical perspective. Does this massive retcon actually fit with what we know about Marshall's history? We were explicitly told that Marshall faked his death and stayed away from his family for decades because he was misdiagnosed with severe schizophrenia, and he was absolutely terrified of passing on his trauma or becoming a burden to his loved ones. His absence was framed as a tragic, deeply misguided act of noble self-sacrifice. Fathering another child while supposedly living in agonizing isolation completely contradicts the narrative of a man paralyzingly afraid of his own shadow. It paints him less as a tragic martyr and much more as a selfish, wandering hypocrite who abandoned one family only to quietly start another. But then again, is that not the very essence of compelling daytime drama? Human beings are inherently contradictory, and loneliness does strange, desperate things to the human psyche. Perhaps his relationship with Isaiah's mother was a brief, desperate anchor in the chaotic storm of his unmedicated mind. While it certainly damages his redemption arc and makes him a deeply flawed, perhaps even unforgivable figure in the eyes of his children, it provides a wealth of rich, emotional storytelling material. It is exactly the kind of messy, complicated character assassination that forces actors to deliver Emmy-worthy performances as they grapple with the betrayal. Furthermore, I strongly believe the tangled branches of this newly discovered family tree will not stop there. If we assume Hudson is Isaiah's brother, but Marshall is only Isaiah's father, then how does Hudson fit into the genetic puzzle? My theory is that Hudson and Isaiah share the same mother. This would make the family dynamic beautifully, painfully convoluted. Imagine the timeline. Marshall was romantically involved with Curtis's mother. Then later, during his lost years, he became involved with Isaiah's mother, resulting in Isaiah. Sometime later, or perhaps before, Isaiah's mother had a relationship with an entirely different man, which resulted in the birth of Hudson. If this intricate theory holds true, Hudson and Isaiah are half-brothers through their mother, while Curtis and Isaiah are half-brothers through their father, Marshall. This means that Hudson and Curtis share absolutely no direct blood relation whatsoever. They are merely connected through their mutual sibling, Isaiah. This lack of genetic connection makes their fierce rivalry even more poetic and dangerous. They are two fiercely protective alpha males, fighting a proxy war over a brother they share in completely different, highly compartmentalized ways. Hudson feels a lifelong, protective bond over Isaiah, while Curtis is suddenly thrust into a brotherhood he never asked for, with a man he has already deeply victimized. Imagine the psychological toll this revelation will take on Curtis. He has spent the last few years doing the grueling emotional labor required to forgive Marshall for abandoning him. He finally accepted his father back into his life, only to now discover that Marshall's absence was filled with the presence of another son. Curtis is already grappling with the immense guilt of his violent actions and the terrifying prospect of missing his new baby's milestones behind bars. Adding the realization that his victim is his own brother, and that his father's entire narrative of noble isolation was a partial lie, might completely break his spirit. The foundation of his identity, which he has fought so hard to rebuild, would crumble to dust beneath his feet. On the other side of the coin, we have Isaiah, who is currently nursing a very justified, burning desire for legal vengeance. He has been venting his frustrations to Britt, making it abundantly clear that his primary goal is to take his abuser down in a court of law and ensure justice is served. How does a man of science, a man dedicated to healing, process the sudden, jarring revelation that the man who nearly destroyed his surgical career is his own brother? And worse, how does he process the sudden materialization of a father he likely thought was dead, absent, or completely irrelevant? Isaiah would be forced to reconcile his righteous anger with the confusing, unasked-for reality of a newfound family, complicating his pursuit of justice with the messy bonds of shared DNA. And sitting right in the center of this impending emotional hurricane is Hudson. If everything plays out this way, Hudson will not just be a vengeful brother arriving to settle a score. He will be the accidental catalyst that exposes decades of carefully constructed lies. By pushing the conflict with Curtis to the absolute brink, Hudson forces Marshall's hand, inadvertently pulling the pin on a grenade that blows up his own brother's reality. Hudson might have come to town seeking a straightforward path of retribution, but he will quickly find himself entangled in a deeply emotional family reckoning that he never could have anticipated. Ultimately, if the writers choose to walk down this incredibly complex path, it will be a masterstroke of dramatic storytelling. It seamlessly weaves a new, mysterious character into the established fabric of the canvas, while simultaneously raising the stakes for legacy characters who are already in the midst of a severe crisis. It forces Marshall to face the true, ugly consequences of his lost decades, puts Curtis in an impossible moral and emotional dilemma, and gives Isaiah a backstory that anchors him permanently to the core families of the show. The fallout from such a revelation would be generational, rippling out to affect Portia, Stella, and everyone else caught in the Ashford orbit. It would challenge their definitions of loyalty, forgiveness, and what it truly means to be a family when the foundation is built on a bed of lies. Of course, this is all just my own elaborate theory, pieced together from the breadcrumbs the show has been dropping. But if things do indeed unfold this way, we are looking at one of the most controversial, emotionally devastating, and utterly captivating family twists this show has delivered in years. And honestly, I cannot wait to see if the truth is even half as messy as the theory.
Goodbye. Please like, subscribe, and comment on the GH Spoilers Daily channel.